Back home now, and following the announcement of a 15% pay rise for childcare workers over the next 2 years, there is growing momentum for calls for a pay rise for those working in the disability services. 4 unions have now joined a Fair Work Commission application to increase the pay of some 270,000 workers in the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
And there are calls for that pay rise to be higher than the rate of inflation, which is 3.8%, although sector consultations are still underway. The Australian Services Union is one of the unions joining that Fair Work action. Angus McFarland is the ASU branch secretary and joins us now. Good morning, thanks for your company.
G'day, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Tell me, what are you hoping to achieve by joining this Fair Work application?
So there are 2 things we're trying to achieve, and there are 2 sort of parts of the application. The first one is making sure that workers in the NDIS are actually paid properly to begin with. Something your viewers might not know is that 10% of workers, we estimate, are currently underpaid in the NDIS. They've ripped off by up to $9 an hour that providers are putting in their pockets rather in the pockets of hard-working disability support workers. So the first part of what we want to do is get people paid properly to start with, and then the second part is looking at lifting those minimum rates in the NDIS.
Well, just on that first part, Angus, how has it got to that point where... So you're saying some people are missing out on $9 per hour?
Yes.
How has that happened?
And I should tell you, that's actually money that's funded by the taxpayer. So how that's happened is because providers, some providers, and as I said, only 10%, not all, are trying to find sort of loopholes where they say that, oh, you're this kind of worker, that kind of worker, pay them under the award, but they claim from the government the full amount to pay the worker properly. They just pocket that $9 an hour and keep it for themselves. So I mean, it's a rip-off.
They're not breaking the
Yes,
the
well,
law.
We believe they are. And look, we've reported...
Really, that's one of the tests.
That's right, and we've reported them to the Fair Work Ombudsman, we've told the government, the NDIA. So the first part of our wages case is really to help clean up the NDIS, because people that do that kind of thing shouldn't be doing business in the NDIS at all.
Yeah, and so the second part, I'm keen to hear what members are telling you about their need for a pay rise, and particularly around the consultations about what extra they're wanting and hoping to get from this.
Yeah, look, it's really hard at the moment, as you know, with the cost of living, and particularly, you know, in Sydney, where I am today, the housing crisis in the market here. Our members are doing it really tough, and one of the problems is that with the NDIS at the moment, the minimum rate of pay is the same for everyone, regardless of the experience you have, any skills or qualifications you have, or if you're working with someone that has more complex needs. So what we're trying to do in that second part of the case is actually create a pay structure that will recognise workers' experience and qualifications and give them like a career pathway, essentially, in the NDIS.
So is it too blunt, this analysis or analogy, that those that have been working for a very long time with a huge amount of experience could be earning the same amount as someone who is still studying or has just entered the industry?
That's exactly right. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
So is that something that disincentivises those people that have been in the industry for a long time from actually staying in as well? It
does, and it actually creates, contributes to the churn crisis in the NDIS. So 1 in 4 workers leave the NDIS every year. That is more than hospitality and retail. There is so much churn, and we know that that costs the scheme $1 billion. Now, why do I say that? Because it's about $10,000 to $12,000 to recruit a new worker into the NDIS, and if 1 in 4 of them leave every year, that's how much it costs. So we think that looking at developing like a pay structure where people can progress in their pay as they work in the scheme will do a lot to keep people and actually create those savings through all that wastage that goes on at the moment. And
we've been reporting in the last couple of days and today about the 15% pay rise for childcare workers, 10% this year and then a subsequent 5% next year. Has that had any impact on your thinking or the way that you're going to progress these discussions?
Well, what a fantastic announcement, and what it has demonstrated is, you know, the great commitment of those early childhood educators over many years to get that, and it certainly gives our members a sense of momentum, because those workers deserve 100% that pay rise, as I think do disability support workers in the NDIS.
Yeah, and look, just finally, what's at stake if this doesn't go ahead, if you don't get a more equitable situation for those working in the disability sector?
Well, I think everyone wants the NDIS to be the best it can be, and there was so much goodwill across the community for that to happen and for the NDIS to fulfil its promise. If we can't keep and attract workers into the NDIS, then the NDIS itself is under threat, really. So this is a part of saving the NDIS and getting it back on track.
Yeah, well, big conversations to follow. Angus and McFarland from the Australian Services Union, thank you so much for your company this morning.